Hello, hello. Thanks for joining us for the Universal Staking Day here today, and thanks for Party Action people for organizing and all the teams that spoke today on the panel. It's been a great effort and been a great day here in spring in Buenos Aires. Really enjoying the city. So today I want to give a short keynote on mapping the universal staking ecosystem. The title has been given a bit before I actually made the presentation, so it might loosely fit. But essentially I want to start by talking a little bit about the problems that we have in the space, right? Basically, we all know the token economy is broken. You can guess the chart of the project. I'm not going to reveal it here, but I guess we have seen a lot of launches that go kind of up a little bit and then are basically trending down to zero very shortly after launch. And I believe there's obviously some questions around just PMF for these tokens, but there's also just things that basically these tokens are not really used in the economies of the projects. They're detached. There's no closed economic loops, and also there's obviously some predatory practices in the space overall relating to tokens. So a lot of deals are made, and once the token launches and it's unleashed upon retail, a lot of value was already extracted, or the price have been brought up so much with unrealistic expectations that there's no more upside there. So I think this has been a major theme over the last few weeks and months that we've been witnessing, but I think we can do better. So basically what universal staking is all about, so today is Universal Staking Day, it's about actually bringing utility to the tokens, creating closed economic loops, creating alignment between the token and the use case that it secures, and especially also capital efficiency. And this is a real topic that we are extremely focused on in Symbiotic, basically creating ways of using tokens in different use cases and creating capital efficiencies through that. Again, it's about any asset, so you can use your native token in the Symbiotic framework. You can use yield-bearing prime collateral, such as STETH or Bitcoin. There's customizable vaults. You can create custom lockup lengths, so many use cases require different types of lockups for their tokens. So often, if you use collateral, you want to make sure it's available for slashing. There might be resolving periods, grace periods for when decisions are being made, if the collateral should be taken or not. There's different logic of how a slashing should be triggered, what happens in the case of a slashing, how the funds will be redistributed between the actors on-chain or off-chain, and also different ways of rewarding people. So essentially, the universal staking framework that Symbiotic is building allows you customize these things, and especially allows you to, what we have learned to say in this industry, restake across different use cases. So meaning you can opt into, with the same collateral, into different sort of commitments of collateral, and then those collateral will be accessible to be slashed by those parties. And some of the use cases that are available for this is one on the infrastructure side, interoperability between chains, obviously app chains itself, staking mechanisms for chains, oracles, but more recently we've seen a lot of underwriting use cases more purely in DeFi, using collateral as a sort of backstop or tranche for covering risks on chain. And I'll go a bit deeper into that. But these are essentially the things that we see in our ecosystem with teams building on Symbiotic. So currently there's, I think, around 23 networks in the ecosystem. We do still have infrastructure use cases, so basically validator sets, right? Every time you need a set of distributed validators, you can get them through staking. There's another use case that extends the capabilities of the core chain, and provide transaction guarantees, which is a form of insurance, right? You want to ensure that your transaction lands on chain, so you can use pre-confirmations. And the way pre-confirmations is using the collateral is essentially ensuring that if the validator doesn't include the transaction, it can be slashed. So we're seeing more and more of these methods. So you can use it on chain, also, for example, to underwrite short-term solver loans. So the CAP model is, for example, very interesting here, where the delegators underwrite basically borrowers that create yield strategies and bring back yield to the protocol and can be slashed if they default. The same can be used, for example, for cross-chain intents, where the liquidity inside a Symbiotic vault can help to underwrite solvers doing their job and kind of getting inventory from Symbiotic potentially even. There's other use cases in consumer credit, in duration risk, and specifically like today we announced the collaboration with Nexus Mutual, so the capital can be used to underwrite additional risks such as smart contract hacks. Like Nexus Mutual is like one of the leading on-chain coverage providers, active since 6 years and with like multiple millions of dollars of claims paid out. Essentially what they are benefiting from here is that the supply in Symbiotic is already earning yields on other use cases in the system and can then thus at a lower cost of capital underwrite the risks of Nexus Mutual. And the cover can be provided, for smart contracts, for Oracle failures, for liquidation. So there's a lot of different types of cover that we can talk about here. But there's actually even like off-chain use cases theoretically that you can leverage the on-chain capital for. So traditional insurance policies, they generally insure like events in the real world, right? Like directors or employees insurance, catastrophe bonds, just reinsurance in general. So we can also use capital that is on-chain to insure these off-chain events and pay out yields to underwriters on-chain. And I think what's really interesting here, and that's essentially how it works in the real world, is things are like kind of independent of each other. In crypto, we're used to like things being very correlated with each other because everyone's kind of focused on the same use case. The overall ecosystem quite small and is moving in conjunction with each other, especially in the early markets where it was just like a kind of small market in comparison overall. And we have these boom and bust cycles where things are interconnected. We saw obviously with the Terra meltdown how far those interlocked things took us. Like we saw FTX being taken down and kind of impacting the overall market, of course, both in terms of like the sentiment, but also in terms of actual exposure to credit risks. In the real world, right, there's like correlations between different industries. They can be very different, right? Here we see some examples like minerals and consumer goods are quite correlated versus other things that are much less correlated. And really the key here is that if you have things that are uncorrelated, you can essentially use the same collateral to underwrite both of these different risks and thus gain capital efficiencies because you essentially can cover both of these scenarios with a statistical significance and with statistical knowledge that it probably will be fine, especially at size, at scale. And this is really what also universal staking allows us to do, and hopefully will unlock a lot of like innovation on the cover and on the general use case of collateral in the space. So I just kind of bring it back a little bit, trying to create a little bit of this correlation matrix, as we call it, for use cases that we have in the universal staking economy. So I haven't filled it out, and maybe also a question to the audience and people in general, how they think these things are correlated. Obviously, this is like a job that in the future will be done by curators and like sort of professionals. Like in Nexus Mutual, there are actuaries actually underwriting risk and analyzing the protocols and also like analyzing the overall exposure of the Nexus Mutual protocol towards different risks and how they are correlated and how their exposure is overall. So I think we stand at the very early inning of this entire things. But basically, like you can tell, even within a certain category, let's say credit risk for solvers, if you loan to one solver and you also loan to like some other entity, the risk of one of them defaulting is not necessarily like correlated as high. There is some correlation potentially if they're like exposed to the same, or if they use the loan to do some certain activity, but it's not necessarily like perfectly correlated. But maybe more clearly, for example, the credit risk of borrowing to a solver and the slashing risk of a proof of stake network, they are very uncorrelated, right? So like a validator double signing is like completely decorrelated from someone defaulting in the most likely case, right? So here you can see that if you sort of combine those cases, you can make the economics and the capital efficiency of restaking work, and this is really something that we're really excited about seeing in the risk marketplace that we're building in Symbiotic, and seeing different curators choosing different strategies to do that. And ultimately, you end up like sort of, if you want to visualize it, we have the system of vaults that are delegating or underwriting different risk use cases in the economy. You end up with like different trade-offs, right? So some people might be overexposed to risks and don't even earn a high reward for it. So this is basically the vault 3 in this illustration. You might be underwriting risks that are actually high risk, but you're not getting paid enough premiums for that. And other vaults might take a high risk and high reward, and then there's like sort of things in the middle. So here is like this efficient frontier, right? Everyone that saw Markowitz and or knows about portfolio distribution like probably seen graphs like this in their past. But essentially, this is the landscape that we end up with in a mature ecosystem where there are different risks and different use cases to stake towards. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to like focus on today. So essentially, highlighting again what we've learned about restaking and this ecosystem in the past, and how correlated risks work, and now a little bit for just how it looks in practice on Symbiotic right now in the ecosystem. We currently have 21 networks live. Most of them are actually still like infrastructure use cases, like intent networks, interoperability, some prover networks. But there are starting to be these DeFi use cases that are starting to appear, like CAP, which is a stablecoin with credible guarantees, where the borrowers are underwritten by the state capital in the vaults of Symbiotic and Eigle also. And there is another use case like with Next Mutual that we announced today, where basically the funds in the vaults can supply underwriting capabilities for cover from the Nexus Mutual protocol. So currently, this is all things that are live or coming to be live. We have over 20 different collateral assets in the system, mostly like staked ETH or other yield-bearing ETH alternatives, but also like Bitcoin, some native tokens such as Hyper token, the Spark token, and other tokens that from teams that want to like secure their own infrastructure with their own native tokens. We have 71 different vaults. There's been 0 slashing so far. We paid out 1.3 million in rewards out since August 25. So this is both across like the native token staking as well as the risk use cases. And we can see this is actually like real yield. So some of it is inflation from tokens that projects issue, but there's also like real yield generated by the risk underwriting. And I think this is like a first. We haven't seen that in the restaking on economies so far. So we expect this to grow a lot in the coming months and years. And then the restaking ratio, which essentially that shows the level of reutilization of collateral within Symbiotic ecosystem. So across the 21 networks and these 71 vaults, a single dollar is kind of reused 3.05 times in the across different use cases. So this is a metric that we're tracking closely and that we're like following to see how risk is shared across the use case and how this evolves. And we also have like the current points program and the system of incentives that sort of targets this ratio. So you can see that the curators are responding to the incentives and are doing things there. And I think this economy will like evolve more and more. So like please follow along. We do have like Dune dashboards on this as well. And yeah, hope you learned something here today. And then feel free to grab me or others if you find us here at DevConnect in Buenos Aires. We're always keen to learn about other use cases that might be requiring underwriting or decentralized infrastructure. And thanks so much for being here today.